So I guess what are our expectations, which is always the interesting thing, especially when you're looking at kids and wondering what can they do. The insight which I've got is not so much teaching which gets in the way, it's sometimes kids just don't know why they need to learn this stuff. And if they don't know why they need to learn it, guess what happens? So I've spent a little bit of time in trying to work out, well, how can we help kids know why they need to learn this stuff and why it's so important? So as Tom said, you know, I work with school leaders, and I do all this sort of stuff. And actually what's quite interesting, I don't know how many of you ever watch TED Talks, but when you're hosting a TED conference, the thing which is really critical is to curate the right speakers in the right order. Typically, a TED conference will last about 10 hours. Typically, we'll have about 25 speakers. Typically, the team will be about 40 people strong. And whenever there's a TED conference, we always try to have a starting moment. And I'd like to share with you a starting moment of one in Vilnius last year. This was made entirely by a bunch of volunteers. All TEDs are run by volunteers. And they produced a piece which I thought was really good. They sort of did a mashup of Carl Sagan. Have you come across Carl Sagan? Astronomer, astrophysicist. He died about 25 years ago, but he recorded some great stuff. And he was the first person who persuaded the Voyager spacecraft, when it left the solar system, to turn and take a picture of planet Earth from space. And we've done a mashup of some of that stuff. See what you think of this. I don't know about you, but I think that's a really lovely beginning to a conference, looking at the world and where it's all heading and all the rest of it. All done by a bunch of volunteers, just following that talk of Carl Sagan and animating it all up. And they did that in just a matter of a few days. Conferences are quite interesting because we try to curate as much as we can to make it interesting and deal with a lot of things. And they're big conferences, a bit like this. And I thought I'd just share with you something which we recorded. It hasn't gone online yet. It'll be going online in about, about a couple of months. This chap was, I'll just share with you, this is me talking to him on stage. You'll hear the back talk from me talking to the technicians. But see what you think of what he was coming up with. And I'm now going to introduce John White.
I am flying. I mean, it's like a dream. I'm flying through the air, through the grey dawn sky, and everything's gone into slow motion. And I'm thinking,
marvelous.
Oh God, it's me. This is how I remember stepping on a bomb in Afghanistan 6 years ago. It left me missing 3 limbs, both legs above the knee and my right arm at the elbow. But I was just happy to be alive. So who did this to me then? I don't exactly know, but this guy was probably involved. Mahmoud Saeed. He was the local bomb supplier in our area of operations in Sangin. I'd met him. I took this photograph. I felt, when I woke up 3 days later back in the UK, that I only had 2 choices. I could either roll over and die, or I could get up and get on with life. So, with the help of my girlfriend, my family, and my friends, that's exactly what I decided to do.
I mean, would you have been like this if this momentous thing hadn't happened?
Yeah, it's really hard. I feel like, in a funny kind of way, I was well prepared for what had happened. You know, I talked earlier about I've never found anything in life easy. I've managed to achieve stuff, but it's always been at a struggle. I'm not one of these, ridiculously talented people that's just glided through life. So I feel like all of those challenges and struggles helped me when I found myself in this moment.
Do you think a good message for audiences like this is to do the impossible just to see if you can?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you very much. And that's really good
Thank
for you to share that story.
Thank you very much.
And I think perhaps what we're not doing is we're not letting kids see how hard it is for some people to get to where they are and how much there is. I don't think things like the X Factor helps. I think people think, oh, it just happens. You just get up and do something and off you go. This is Christina Ballan here. She is the woman who invented all of the electrics for all of the hybrid and electric cars we have. And I don't know if you noticed downstairs is Tesla things, and she did the batteries for the Tesla, along with every other manufacturer. And she is a lovely lady. She's Romanian. She was so scared of standing up on stage. So these people exist, and it's really wonderful when we start bringing them together, because then kids suddenly see that actually maybe I need to do this stuff, and then their expectations start changing. The trouble is, sometimes we see, but we don't see. I've put something up on the screen there. What do you all see that says? Yeah, it says Paris in the spring. A lot of people don't see that. They see Paris in the spring, and that's it. When you see that it's Paris in the spring, you can't believe you didn't see it the first time. Just for a moment, how many of you didn't see the? Okay, so it's about 50-50. I wonder how many times we're talking to kids about opportunities and they don't see it. I wonder how many are going home into difficult areas with difficult stuff, and although we're talking about education, we're talking about learning and great futures, and they're surrounded by people who are naysayers and tell them it's all rubbish. And of course, there are more of them than there are of us. So anyway, I qualified as a chartered accountant. I accidentally became director of recruitment for EY. I was part of a small group of people. We managed to borrow a lot of money. We borrowed 6 billion quid. We did some stuff in London. I helped launch Lazy Town. So if you like that, then I'll lay claim to it. If you don't like it, I've got no idea who those nutters are. Put a software company together. And now I try to spend my time in education. And I just try to make myself be relatively useful if I can. This is a picture of Mark Zuckerberg when he was at college. He's the guy who created Facebook. Here's a picture of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs when they were at college together. Who would have thought? I mean, who would have thought? This guy called Jordan Casey, who I talked to at a TEDx in Klagenfurt last year, at the age of 14, he wrote his first computer game and sold 1.6 million copies. He's now doing his GCSEs. He lives in Waterford in Ireland. So we have no idea what people are capable of. This is a school I helped design in Newton Abbot. And I thought, well, if we're going to do new school, everybody says there's no money. Rubbish. There's plenty of money. You just mustn't spend it stupidly. So that was about 30% cheaper than the EFA, Education Funding Agency, had as their target for how you can reduce all the costs. And we beat it by 30%. Of course we did. And we did things like that, put little cave spaces and all this sort of gear. And so all these pictures are of schools which all cost about 30% less than people were expecting. And I think that's the game, is our expectations are always wrong. We never know what's possible until somebody achieves it, and then we go, well, of course that can be done. This is in Yorkshire for kids who don't have really good places to do home study. It costs a couple of £1,000 quid. All that sort of, this is a little chair you sit on. It tells you a story. You get off. It stops, and it's just an iPod Shuffle and a couple of speakers. It costs a couple of £100 quid. So anybody can do this stuff. So that's me. That's roughly what I do. Except the world is changing, and it's changing really fast. This is Google's website in 1998. You know, and if you see that, it's might work some of the time prototype that is much more up to date. And that was it, in 1998. 2 months later, it became that. Just 2 months later. It took 4 years until it became that. And that looks pretty much like Google looks today. That was where the whole development really took place. Everything else is tweaking and adjusting and putting lots more stuff on it. That's 2004. So kids have lived with this all their lives. Here we go, the Facebook in 2004. It wasn't called Facebook, it was the Facebook. It was just for Mark Zuckerberg and Harvard University. Who would have thought that would become ubiquitous? YouTube started off as a dating site. This isn't mine, by the way, but I'm a male seeking everyone between 18 and 45. And the idea of YouTube, some of you are too late for that. And the idea was you publish yourself, you put it up for everybody to see, and you see if you can hook up with somebody. I don't think anybody thought that was possible. And if you look at what's happening in organizations today, companies and fast-growing organizations look like these sorts of places today. So life has changed. There's a huge amount of material, huge amount of information. People are starting to say that work-life balance is important, that you should be able to go to a place and just do something. And this is the railway station here. I mean, just who would have thought that that is a railway station? You know? So the world has changed quite dramatically, except the world of education. If you go to most schools today, you can recognize it from a school 40 years ago. You know, you look at New Street Station 40 years ago, it wouldn't look like that. And I think that's where, in some cases, we're missing out. And people are starting to take advantage of them. I gave a talk for North Tyneside Heads, and I was picked up by a taxi. And I was talking to the taxi driver on the way, and I stopped him, and I said, you know, you're really interesting. Do you mind if I interview you? And he said, why do you want to do that? I said, because you're interesting. And I just made this on my iPhone. So it's a bit crappy, but see what you think of this. There's the taxi driver. What do you do right now?
I drive taxis for eco-cabs.
And why did you do that?
It was the first job I could get after teaching windsurfing in Greece.
In Greece? And before that?
I was working for a demolition company in Austria.
And before that?
I was teaching windsurfing in Greece as well.
And before that?
I was working for Iceland, the frozen food company, as a duty manager.
Where?
In Hexham.
In Hexham. And before that?
Well, while I was doing that, I was also at Northumbria Uni and Newcastle College.
And what did you do at Northumberland Uni?
I was a building surveyor, doing building surveying.
Okay, and then you went into demolition in Austria.
Just to blow stuff up. Yeah, that was
okay,
it.
and before you went to uni to study building surveying?
It was Iceland. Oh, before that, I was travelling around Spain and France doing a thing called woofing, which is willing workers on organic farms.
And before that?
Worked in a bar.
Where?
In Warden,
which
just
is near
outside Hexham.
And before that?
I worked in a joinery in Langley, which is also just outside of Hexham.
Doing what?
Sanding stuff, building doors, making windows, painting.
And before that?
I worked in a paper shop in Hexham.
And before that?
Worked in Marks and Spencer's in the food hall.
For how long?
For like a year.
And before that?
Before that, I was at Hexham High School, QE.
Doing what?
Studying for my GCSEs and A-levels, and then disappearing after A-levels.
God, fantastic. And how old are you?
I'm 26.
That's amazing. And he's now teaching sand surfing in Dubai. He's 27. I mean, I don't think a lot of us would realize that that is possible. And I don't know how many of us talk to taxi drivers. I don't know how many times we say to kids, talk to everybody and find out about themselves, because that might give you a hint about opportunities which are available for you. I won't show that. And you'll see this stuff kicking around. You know, people are starting to use Uber. Uber is what? Personal transportation, peer-to-peer transportation involving a human interface. But everything else is automated, isn't it? The bills are automated, the way you drive is automated, it's all done through SAT Nav and everything else. So actually the human interface is just a small part of it. So the logical thing to do is to replace the human interface with self-driving, of course. But actually the real game is to have self-driving trucks, because motorways are clogged, aren't they? So if we have trucks which are driving themselves automatically, we don't have to worry about nighttime driving and all the rest of it, so roads will be safer, we'll use our motorways and highways better, and there'll be 200,000 people out of work because they're not needed. But a lot of people here will say there's no way we'll have self-driving trucks. But that's a 747 when the 747 launched, it needed 5 people on the flight deck, you know, pilot, co-pilot, navigator, engineer, and a spare just in case. Today, we have these, which have 2 people on the flight deck, need 1, but potentially don't need any. And a lot of people say that's ridiculous, but have you ever come on a flight and it lands and you go, how the hell did they get past this? And you don't want a bloke at the front going, I know the airport is around here somewhere, let's find it. You expect it to be automated. In fact, you require it to be automated. So if we're comfortable in getting in something flying at 500 miles an hour, carrying 600 people, and it's automated, then actually making the transition to automated trucks isn't that much of a deal. And we're getting all this stuff happening with WikiLeaks, with the papers being released, Do you remember that stuff? Panama Papers, do you remember that? The Prime Minister of Iceland had to resign in less than a day after 2 million papers got released by one person clicking one button. So this is what's going on today. You'll find that 30% of the global population has still to be hooked up properly. Actually, 60% of the global population doesn't have access to the internet and is expected to come on board in the next 5 years. And that's going to change everything. Because if you're sitting in Somalia and you don't have free water, you don't have any clean water, it's a bit rich, isn't it, when you see that a chief executive of a company in France earns 2 million a year when you don't even have water coming out of a tap. And I think that's part of the challenge which our young people are going to have to face. And there's some of the other stuff which is going on, which is to have transportation via drones. And actually, Christina Balan has just been working with, do you know the woman who, from Tesla, or who created the Tesla, has been working with Bill Gates to create drones which fly 100 kilometers, carry a 10-kilo payload, and can take medical supplies into areas where you can't get trucks, such as when you've had earthquakes or natural pestilence. And that's what's going on today. And then we start looking at what's happening in the commercial world, and you look at the value of startups, so that's new organizations per employee. The most powerful at the moment is Snapchat. The valuation is $15 billion. It's got 300 people. So that's 48 million per person. And when we look at major organizations in the world and say, who is the driving forces in the world? The biggest organization in the world by market capitalization is Rio de Janeiro Gas at 1.7 trillion. A third of the size of that is Apple at 500 billion. And then you've got Alphabet, which is Google at 400, then Microsoft, Exxon, Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett. And you go all the way down until you start recognizing any names. And that's what's happening today, ladies and gentlemen. And because we have the internet, kids see that. So when you say you can get a job at Barclays, they go, yeah, Barclays ain't on the list, mate. So it's not about what you know anymore. It's also who you know, and even more importantly, how you know them. This kid will always be known as a boy who stuck his head through the plastic chair just to see if his head could fit through it. And you get all this stuff. You know, adults create these things. You know, secret about what the hell's going on there. And you will find people in your school doing this sort of stuff. You will see this. This is the Westminster Tube Station. Who the hell is Private Rod? I said. Further on, you've got some cannibals kicking around in the tube stations. This is in Wales, so road signs have to be in English and in Welsh. I put this one through Google Translate just to see what it says. You know what it says? It says, I'm not in the office at the moment. Send any work to be translated. But equally well, you go into a lot of schools, you'll see this stuff. This is in a shopping centre around the corner. Toilet only for disabled, elderly, pregnant children. You find one of those, and you're doing really well. This is in a school. Do not on this door unless it's an emergency staff room. That really says we're integrating with people, doesn't it? And here is a poor kid who was told to write a Christmas letter to Santa. Dear Santa, how are you? This is what I want for Christmas. So this is the world today, ladies and gentlemen, and we get caught in mindsets, you know? When you're a kid and you're faced with an escalator for the first time, it's pretty hard. Today, for us, what's hard is going on an escalator which is off. Has anyone noticed how hard that is? And our mindsets get really, really, really freaked out. So, ladies and gentlemen, which of these vertical lines is longer? The one on the left or the one on the right? Okay, who thinks the one on the left? Okay, who thinks there's one on the right? Who thinks they're the same size? Yeah, well, the one on the right is 25% shorter. So why do we do that? It's because we're so educated, we forget to use our heads. So let's do it again. Which one's longer? One on the left or the one on the right? Who thinks one on the left? Who thinks one on the right? Yeah, a few of you. Who doesn't want to who doesn't want to, well, they're the same size. And some of you will be here saying, I knew that, I was going to say it. So there is something about what are the dreams of the kids. I mean, what are their dreams? So I set up a social enterprise a few years ago with just a few people, And we exist because what we wanted to do was to see if we can help kids work their ways out of all of this stuff. And we just do three things. We develop students, we try to improve the teaching and learning environment, we try to inspire, educate. I mean, inspire. And this is the way we do it. We've experimented and we've found we can do this in about 4 days. I'd like to share with you how you can do this in about 4 days. Because it's not about teaching, actually. It's just about showing the way. So day one, all we do, and all you need to do, is we just do a kickoff with a whole year group. Let's say in that year group are some kids who are disadvantaged or disengaged or whatever, or could achieve a lot more. And we run a hot seat, which is where we get the head to sit on the table, and the kids can ask any question of anything to be answered truthfully, fairly, honestly, and completely. And that becomes super powerful because some of these kids have never, ever had a proper conversation with the head teacher, ever. The only conversation they've ever had is when they're in the shit. This is a girl who wanted to get in the hot seat herself. And we run something called a diary room, where kids record their own thoughts to a camera in a quiet environment. And that is amazingly powerful. And then we take them off to meet interesting people. We put them in a coach, and we go off. So this is us taking some kids to see a guy who runs Google. This is some kids who we want to see a doctor who's in charge of the Zika virus. Here it is seeing the guy who set up Charles Tyrwhitt with a shirt company. Here's some kids going to see a guy at Fortnum & Mason who's an actor. Here's some kids going off to see Al Jazeera. And we go to about 5 places in the same day, spend an hour in boardrooms of people and ask any question at all of anything. And it's very, very, very powerful when kids have got up close and dirty to people doing amazing things. And then another day, which is usually a couple of weeks later, we work with the kids and say, how would you share this to the other kids in your school? Oh, by the way, in 2 hours, you're going to give a presentation to the rest of your year group. You see, that's one of these Paris in the spring things, where a lot of people say that's just not possible. So kids prepare it, they rehearse it, they do all that sort of stuff, and then they deliver a presentation to their year group. And that makes a hell of a difference to them. And then about 4 or 5 weeks later, we bring in 4 or 5 local decision makers, work with the kids on how can they develop their own lift message, you know, elevator pitches and all that sort of stuff. And then they each spend 2 minutes, one-to-one, with each of those decision makers. And in those 2 minutes, quite a lot of children, quite a lot of kids have organized work experience. There was one boy who talked his way into Lots Road Art Gallery, got himself trained to be an auctioneer, and 3 weeks ago ran 10 lots at Lots Road Galleries and auctioned off 30,000 quid's worth of antiques. He's 14 and is in care. What do you think that does for his self-esteem? And what do you think that does about giving him a repertoire of stuff to talk about? And then later on, if people want it, we help the students work out what can be done to their school and make it better, develop ideas, pitch it to SLT, which kids have never usually had the chance of doing, or even run some programs for kids in their school. And what takes place in that is change happens. Amazing change happens. And I quite enjoy seeing that stuff go on. And I'm sure a lot of us here have done all of that and seen children dramatically develop way beyond what we thought they'd be capable of. And funnily enough, what then happens is that they realize that the difference between me and the world I'd like to be, the place I'd like to be, are these pesky exams. I might as well get them. And funnily enough, they do. So I'd like to share with you something. This is very much a draft of something which I'm trying to show to people to see if we can get some more commitment from corporates to help support us. It's confidential, so don't share it. Well, you can't share it, but it's confidential. And I'd just like to share with you the results of some diary rooms and a bit of a compilation of various bits and pieces. It's going to look a bit salesy, but it's aimed at corporate sponsors to see if they want to give us some time and some ability. We have about 400 people who are prepared to share everything for about an hour with kids, you know, if we take 5 at a time. But just see what you think of this.
Hello, my name's and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My parents split up when I was 2 years old, My dad was a violent man and had an addiction to drugs and alcohol. And I might be going into care as they agree my mum needs time to sort herself out. I lost my granddad, my step-granddad, as he was murdered on his own doorstep. This left me in an emotional state as it was all unexpected, but the way I think of it is everything happens for a reason.
The reason I don't see my dad is because I don't want to. He always was sort of violent around the house. He was never there. He would drink way too much.
Why would you define someone by the things that they can't do? Why would you start from the negative? Why wouldn't you build on the positives? We've all got them.
Today's been really interesting and different, and I never thought it would turn out the way it is.
Today was a really good opportunity. I learned a lot of things, like funny and then sad.
My recap for today of what I learned is that talking, you can understand and learn a lot from it.
I'm looking forward to actually meeting some famous people and getting to know how they started off and what they were like as a young child.
You spent a bit of time with students on the Unlock programme, just coming to visit you. Tell me, do you think that was good?
Yeah, absolutely, very valuable. So our business needs to connect with the communities that they serve. It also needs to attract diverse talent into its business and show people who normally wouldn't think about Barclays and banking as a career that it's for them.
So what would you like them to take away from meeting you and your colleagues?
I think finding the passion and turning that into your job, so finding what makes you happy.
If there was a message you wanted to leave them with, what would that message be?
That it's possible to do anything they want to do, to have the confidence to do that whatever they might want to do in their life, and to, as long as they try their best, they should be able to achieve something.
Students who, with very specific areas to do with their confidence where they were lacking, so things like the student who couldn't ask for his own bus ticket, who couldn't ask for the bus to stop, who relied on his older brother to do that. He has stood up and spoken in front of a group of 200 of his peers and teachers.
I can do speeches about my heart, trying to punch out my heart.
We're about to meet some really important people, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I feel like it's a really good experience, but I'm also very nervous at the same time.
In this programme, I've learned how to build my self-confidence up and to speak out loud.
One thing I really enjoy about this course, it gives me a lot of confidence to do what I do, and I think it prepares me for me going outside, going for an interview and asking questions and things like that.
The vast amount of adults that they're meeting in different professional sectors and the types of people from different types of backgrounds has been amazing.
I think this programme has helped me a lot because it's made me think about what I want to do in the future and I want to become a teacher.
The reason we chose the girls that you guys have worked with is because they were really underconfident, had real zero self-esteem, and if we don't get to the root of that as a problem, we can't ever expect them to attain what we need them to at the end of Key Stage 4.
The way that they teach you, it's like they're not teaching, but they're teaching you at the same time.
I'm gonna try to concentrate more on life and stop being on my phone all the time. Stop lounging about and not doing stuff and actually try to make a difference.
So I would recommend this for everyone that is not too sure about what they want to do, because this will actually help you. So yeah, you should definitely do this.
It's looking like a beautiful day.
I hope that this has all helped everyone because it's helped me, and I'm thankful for this, so thank you for all your time.
I mean, you get the idea. It's sort of like, I didn't want to make it salesy, but I think people need to know some of the kids who we're having to deal with and some of their backgrounds. And these are kids who are really lovely kids, but are a little bit messed up. Does that make sense? Equally well, there are a lot of high-performing kids in schools, and they've been told by their parents, you've got to be a doctor, and actually they want to be dancers. But their parents say, over my dead body, are you ever going to be a dancer? So how do we give them the confidence to be the person they want to be? And I think if we can do that, then we can give them the keys to unlocking everything. And isn't that what we're all doing this about and why we're doing it? It's just that we're being assessed on a whole load of measures. So people said to me, prove it works. Have you ever had people saying that to you? You've got to concentrate on maths and science and everything else. So we don't. And 90% of the kids we've worked with have achieved 5 HSCs, including English and maths. Anyway, funnily enough, pupil premium kids outperform non-pupil premium kids A-star A's. Because I think that I say, bugger it, I might as well get them, and they overshoot by accident. And isn't that a charming thing to do? So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry if I've bored you to tears, but there is something really fantastic about getting the potential which we know kids have got, and one of the reasons why we're all doing this in the first place. So thank you very much for bearing up with me on how to pass pesky exams. Thank you.